Welcome to the Midlife Pilot Podcast. What is it like to become a pilot in midlife? The challenges are unique, but so are the rewards. Hosts Ben, Brian, and Ted talk learning to fly, growing as pilots, and the joy of flying to destinations. The purpose of the podcast is not to teach, but to share knowledge and experiences. Don't forget, the Midlife Pilot Podcast Nashville fly-in is April 26th, 27th, and 28th. While the Midlife compound is sold out, there are plenty of options to stay nearby. Join us, and we apologize in advance if Ben does karaoke. Okay, checklists are complete. Let's get the show started.
Hello, and welcome to episode 63 of the Midlife Pilot Podcast, where we talk all things flying and aviation in midlife. And to be technical, it's episode 63B. My name is Ben. I am a commercial pilot here in Marietta, Georgia, flying a Cessna 182 I affectionately call the Beast, who is now down once again. We have Brian, a private pilot, tailwheel endorsed, coming to us live from Nashville, the home of the Bachelorette Super Charlie, flying a Cherokee 180 named Lucy. Hey, Brian.
How's it going, Ben? And I'm sorry to hear about the Beast, but the Beast will return.
Soon, we hope. And it hopefully won't be too expensive. Also, from the West Coast, our sport pilot extraordinaire flying a flight design CTLS we like to call the Egg. We have Ted. Welcome, Ted.
How you doing?
I am good. We are very good now. I got a lot of flying in this past week, only to find that we've been flying with 3 engine mount bolts and not 4, which was discovered during an oil change. But hopefully that will be remedied in the next couple of days.
I don't envy that, but I'm glad that was not a thing.
I am too. And I will say, I'm wondering how much an engine mount bolt is going to cost, because we're replacing all of them after this has happened. But, it's probably one of those small pieces of metal that costs $3,000 a piece. That's what my guess is going to be. I don't know.
I bet that the bolt is cheap. It's all the labor around it that's going to cost, right? Yeah, it's like $4 bolt, $4,000 to get to it.
Exactly.
I wonder how that's threaded in terms of, I wonder if there's something with the threading. Because like you said, that's all safety wired and
lock nut. I don't know. I don't know.
Is it just because the Beast cannot be contained?
I think it may be it. It's
too powerful.
When we hang it on the prop, getting 1,600 feet per minute in the takeoff climb, maybe it's just saying, it's time to change out some hardware. So let's take care of a few housekeeping items. We broadcast typically on Tuesday evenings, 8 p.m. Eastern. You can find us at youtube.com/@midlifepilotpodcast. Due to technical difficulties last week, we ended up having to redo this, and that's why we're here on a beautiful Sunday evening. The audio podcast is available at iTunes, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. Please make sure that you subscribe or follow, and we would really appreciate it if you left us a 5-star review. It will get read on the episode following you posting it. We love feedback. We have some that we'll be getting to a little bit later on, but we like getting your feedback and your suggestions. You can email us at midlifepilotpodcast@gmail.com, or you can go to our website at midlifepilotpodcast.com. We've got all the links to everything there. Ted will be posting all this into the show notes, so you don't have to be writing this down. We have our Patreon account is alive and well, and if you're a Patreon member, you got the notice that we had our first podcast fail, and you're probably back with us now. So we've had a lot of people join recently. You can support us at Midlife Pilot Podcast. Too much to remember, but the links will be in the show notes. So tonight we're going to visit the topic of we're finding the right plane for your mission. Oh, thank you. I did forget. Ted, tell us, we've got, I believe, 10 new Patreon members.
Yeah, we've had quite the list of new people joining us, so I'm going to read through those real quick here.
Yeah, please.
So in our Caps Available tier, we have Michael Y. and Daniel G. At the Beast Stole Kit level, we have Russ and Rick C. And we have who we're calling Lima Tango. That's someone that I referred to as Mom. Thanks, Mom, for supporting us. It's always nice to see that show up. At the Hershey Bar level, we have Rick K., Andrew S., Tyler D., and Prescott Flyer. And then in Landomatic, we have Jeremy H. and Chris M. So thanks all. It's nice to have you joining us.
That's awesome. It's kind of overwhelming. The fact that we just started this Patreon and to see how much appreciation we've been getting and the way we repay everybody is immediately by tanking an episode. So, it means a lot, not only that people have raised their hand to support what we're doing here, but also are patient and understanding. And, it was a good run. 62 technically clean episodes. I guess it's sort of like you tell yourself when you do your emergency brief, when the engine fails.
Yes.
When the episode fails.
So I will say this. I was actually texting with RH from Opposing Bases, and they actually early on, like in the first 10 or 15 episodes, they actually forgot to hit the record button and had to go back and do another episode. Ours was more technical in nature. We didn't forget anything. It was just bad things happen. That's all. So, I mean, I feel bad, but I don't feel as bad as forgetting to hit a record button.
Yeah.
That's good. That's really good. Well,
it happens.
We probably should have, but we tried anyway.
Right.
And you see how that went. No, but I think also what people should understand is that this podcast was every 2 weeks for quite a long time. And then it's only been for the last 20 episodes or so that we've been going weekly. And that's really been a grind, but we're getting used to it. But it does accelerate the odds or increase the odds of something getting wacky at some point, especially because Ben, you just weren't in your home environment. And that was what started the ball rolling. And then Ted lives in, whatever, the middle of Silicon Valley, as far as I know, and can't get any internet to work. So I guess the connection, Ted, that you've stolen from your neighbor, it's gotten eaten by the squirrels or something.
Right. The string on the tin can was getting a little thin. Yeah. A little too much rain on it, maybe. Yeah. So I just appreciate when we didn't have a Patreon, it would be like, well, yeah, we'll do it again sometime, whatever. But I think we do feel a little bit more of a responsibility now to deliver. So I just want people to know that we sense that and we appreciate that, and it's a two-way thing. I'm not saying we're not doing anything mission critical here, but we like to do it and we like to share everything with everybody. So, but speaking of mission, Ben, do you want to turn us into our topic again?
Yeah. Well. So we've gotten a little bit of feedback from folks in the Discord server. And it comes down to trying to figure out what the right plane is for your mission. And, I think, Brian, in the last episode, the first thing we did is let's define what mission is. What does that actually mean? And, a friend of the show, a frequent supporter and contributor to the show, our friend Wendell Geek, had some commentary on this. Ted, do we want to go ahead and play that now?
Sure. Yeah, let's play that.
Ben, Ted, Brian, I'd like a word. And that word is mission. If you ever look for advice on buying an airplane, almost everyone will tell you that you have to define your mission.
Identify your average mission.
Mission is very important with aircraft.
First question that always comes up is, what is your mission?
What is your mission profile?
Well, I agree. Your mission, you have to define it.
People will always talk about define the mission.
Look, I understand the purpose of the phrase. It probably originated when there were a ton of aviators who, having successfully survived World War II, needed to decide if they were going to have a bonanza or a steerman be their cause of death. To them, mission made intuitive sense. But I've checked my birth certificate, and it's not just my forgetfulness. I really wasn't present at Iwo Jima. To me, Enola Gay sounds like it's a little insensitive, not a harbinger of death. Calling my purpose for buying an airplane a mission strikes me as even more archaic than METARs and TAFs having obscure abbreviations that everyone has to look up. M07 means -7, but -BR means light mist. We have enough bandwidth to transmit video in real time, yet we can't spare a few bytes to type out in the vicinity? Unfortunately, here's the problem. I don't have a better, equally pithy phrase to replace mission. So I'm just going to have to live with it, and every other person who says it, as if they can tell you exactly where they were when they read that Pearl Harbor was attacked, on a piece of paper, 24 hours after it happened. So go ahead and define your mission. I look forward to your telegraph stop, informing me, stop, of what you've decided, stop. Okay, thanks.
I enjoyed that more the second time around, I think. That's so good. And I want to thank One Dull Geek for giving us that. It's born out of a conversation that we had, because I thought that his rants were very Andy Rooney-like, for those midlifers who recall 60 Minutes. But yeah, so I love that. I love that whole bit. It's only a matter of time before Iwo Jima is brought up on the Midlife Pilot podcast, so we got that covered. But no, I specifically love the idea of exploding this term for a minute, mission. I also, by the way, I love that he included so many clips of other people saying it, and it's interesting because I can recognize some of the voices and some I don't. But But it is a testament to just the idea that this is a lot of fodder that we all hear all the time in our consumption of aviation-related content. And so I think for us to speak to it from a midlife perspective, we have to just be honest about where we're coming from. And that's a unique point of view. That's why everybody's here. And that's why we're doing this podcast. So in exploring the term mission and opening that up a little bit, I think that we are settling into a couple of assumptions. One is we are not flying for hire or aspiring to go to the airlines necessarily. That doesn't mean that we don't have people that listen that are in that mindset, but I'm just saying, for the sake of the broader midlife pilot perspective, I think that there's a pretty narrow set of constraints there already that we're looking at in terms of mission. And my first contention with the word mission is it sounds like something that's important and that you have to do. And I think that the number one thing of all midlife piloting, as it were, is we don't ever have to do anything. And that's the beauty of it. That's how you stay safe, right? Is just knowing that, I suppose. So redefining the word mission, dialing back the term mission a little bit, and just thinking about, most of us, I think, are in a position where we started flying fairly recently in midlife. That's why we're here. I think that if you are a person in midlife, you've probably already settled a lot of other aspects of your life, generally speaking. And so it makes sense that we as midlife pilots would want to almost use the same decision-making muscles around how home buying or car buying, or, we just want to be prudent about the decisions, I think, that we're making. Again, though, backing off of this term mission a little bit, it's sort of maybe a softer. We don't have another term for it, but it's maybe what's your midlife mission? Because I think that a lot of us are kind of amazed that we're even flying in the first place, or that we even that we even learned how to land, much less, let's figure out the right plane. But that is something that you get into. And I'll just say, for me, my perspective, my experience has been this sort of trajectory. I got my training in rented aircraft, rented 172. I got my private certificate, I guess, at about 60, 65 hours. And I had no idea what I was going to, I knew that I wanted to fly to places and I wanted to fly with friends and family and stuff, right? But I also, whatever, economically was just kind of in a position of, I don't know, I just got here and I'm, just training alone was a lot. And so I didn't have necessarily a huge amount of choices, but I will say that I started out by renting flight school aircraft and just doing more of the same, but without an instructor and doing small trips. But obviously what happens is quickly you grow in your experience and your abilities and your desires to do more things. And so eventually I got into a kind of a timeshare situation. It was sort of like a flying club. It was just one plane that was rented through a flight school here, but it was 4 people total that we kind of shared, and you prepaid for these blocks. And it was this kind of unique thing. I think we talked about it on the episode that we had Jeff Ramsey, CFII Jeff Ramsey on. It's his school, flight frequency change aviation. He was experimenting with this business model, which I thought was great. And that served me very well for a while until that plane got turned over by the wind and I ripped the tie downs off. And then I was, in a position where, okay, I need to find a flying club. I kind of found a fledgling kind of 172 to rent for a while. And I really enjoyed that. And I started traveling and doing more things with that. And then now I'm, down the road, I'm in a position of being a partial owner in a Cherokee 180. And I will say that for me, my mission in the earliest side of thinking about my mission, it was stay with the learning, get better. I have a lot to do. It's not about how many knots in cruise. It's not about fuel burn. It's just about, I got to keep flying. So I just want to reiterate that even though we're talking about getting into sort of this idealized state of what's best for you, I think that it's just more about exploring the thinking a little bit and understanding that it is a dynamic thing and that we're always learning and that we're always going to grow into and out of various things as our experience grows. So for me, the thing that I didn't see coming is, while I'm 100% sure that being in a Piper Cherokee 180 is the absolute, if I have nothing else, that is the Toyota Camry of the skies. It does everything just fine. And it will haul some stuff. It'll haul some people. It'll take off reasonably short. It'll land reasonably short. It's safe. It's solid. And, it's fast enough to go kind of wherever I feel like going. And it's got enough range to do kind of those things. So to me, for instance, this is a sort of a side note, but a friend of mine has this YouTube channel called Regular Car Reviews. And whenever he has people asking him, what car should I get? He just says Toyota Camry, Toyota Camry, Toyota Camry, and Toyota Camry, or he'll say Corolla, but one of the two, I guess a Corolla would be like a 140 and then a Camry would be like a 180, but you can't go wrong with those things. You're not going to have, I don't know, this incredible speed. You're not going to dazzle people with your air conditioning, probably. But anyway, the one thing I didn't foresee was about 200 hours in, 250 hours in, 300 hours in, I forget where I was. Around there, I got my tailwheel endorsement. I got time in 140, and that rearranged my brain completely. That, if I could start all over, and I've said this before, but I would have done my entire private training in a tailwheel. I loved the low and slow. I don't care. Give me 150 feet per minute in the summer. I'll get there eventually, just watch where you're flying. But that type of flying and that type of experience was so exhilarating to me. I realized that is definitely a part of what I would like to be doing. So in my case, the way I've broken it down, and I would invite other people to do this too, is you don't have to put all your eggs in one basket. You can be a partial owner in your travel plane, and you can be a renter of another. You can do a lot of things, but I think that I'm still early enough on in my journey and limited enough really in my ultimate capabilities in terms of, I'd love to just buy a bunch of planes, but I feel like I've arrived in a good spot, but I had a lot of things that took me by surprise. And the last thing I'll say before I hand this off to you, Ben, is, and maybe this is sort of a way to start that, is I think most pilots that I know that have trained in midlife and started flying in midlife had designs in their head about what they were going to be doing once they got their certificate. And then the reality of what they're doing after they get their certificate is different in terms of either what's available to them or their family's willingness to even fly with them or any number of things. So even if you define your mission for yourself, Ben, you can't really control, your family didn't go through the training with you, and maybe they just don't like it unless it's very calm or whatever. So
I couldn't agree with you more. I would say sometimes, or it seems like most of the time, the tail's wagging the dog, and a few times the dog's wagging the tail. And what I mean by that, and I'm going to try to stay away from the word mission and use the word purpose instead. In our first attempt at this podcast, Alpha Juliet in the chat room had mentioned, that was one of the words you could maybe supplant for mission. But for most people, you're right. You don't know if your spouse is going to want to fly. You may have aspirations to travel in your region and take your family with you. You may, have all these different ideas, but all these things don't come together and you're not able to do it. I feel like I was a little bit different. I was given an opportunity to learn how to fly in a plane that met the mission that I had. And my goal is to get my certificate and my instrument rating so I can use my plane to get to places that I travel for work and also take the family flying. It bothered me a little bit that we only have 4 seats and there's 5 of us, me and my wife and 3 boys, and I have to choose which was my least favorite child to leave at home. But, we worked through that. Just kidding. I love all 3 of my boys the same. But as it turned out, one was at college and there were 2 at home. So there was never the opportunity or never the need to fly 5 people at once. Everything just kind of fell into place for me. I was able to get my certificate, did all my training in the 182, did my instrument training in that. I used the plane for work. Earlier, I was lamenting that I have a meeting that's a 3-hour drive tomorrow that I was planning to fly to, but now we have a missing bolt. And I think I'm more upset that I'm having to drive than having had that bolt missing. So that's just me. But my point is that I kind of had my mission planned out very early on. Once I knew that I got access to this airplane, I still have other airplanes that I would love to own that I think I would make my mission fit those airplanes. And that's the point that I'm trying to get to. I think a lot of us end up creating our missions or our purposes around the planes that we have access to. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's fantastic. As long as you're getting up in the air and you're flying in and you're enjoying yourself and you're doing it in a safe manner, I think that's fantastic. The best laid plans always go awry, or most of the time go awry, however the saying goes. But my point is that you're absolutely right, Brian. If you had picked up that tail wheel from the very beginning, you think you'd have flown to Marfa? Maybe.
It would have taken a lot longer.
It would have. And it would have been fun. I'm not knocking it, but your mission would have changed, or your purpose would have changed a little bit. That you're now having to plan a 5 or 6 day trip around that, as opposed to a 2 or 3 day trip.
Yeah,
and so, but you also have to figure in your budget. Can I afford a turboprop? No, but man, that would be my ultimate, a TBM or a M600 or something like that. That would fit me perfectly, because it's the places I really want to go. I'd like to go a lot further.
Should we start? Do you think, we've had reasonable luck with the Patreon. I'm wondering, would it be a step too far to start a GoFundMe for Ben's TBM?
I will start filing the 135 certificate for it. And if we do the GoFundMe, I will fly Patreons wherever they want to go.
There you
Once
go.
we get the approved certification from the FAA, all you have to do is ask and I'll fly you.
Isn't this the same kind of level of irrational pipe dream that's starting an airline? I think this is what just happened here. I think we just started an airline.
Could be.
Oh.
So Ted, I wanted to ask you, how did you approach your purpose or your mission, if you would, with your flying?
Yeah. As a, part of it is your finances and the options available to you. And for me, part of that is being a sport pilot. So you have one passenger. That's great. I live in a household of two. Turns out one of them really does not like getting near small aircraft, which is fine. So being in a 2-person plane was fine for me. But I spent some real time looking at different planes and really thinking about what it was that I wanted to do. And I think that when you're in training and when you're early after getting your ticket, thinking about planes, it's a little different than the reality of when you've got one and what you actually use it for. When you can now go away for a weekend and not worry about the clock ticking and getting the plane back, you may fly it differently or go to different places than you were planning on. But I'm someone who in the past has always liked small cars, underpowered motorcycles. So it's no surprise to me that being in a light sport is really kind of up my alley. I really, I really enjoy these slightly underpowered, slightly small planes. And but what I found that I do more of than I thought was kind of gentleman's backcountry flying. So going to a remote lake that has a fairly nice grass strip and camping. And that's not something that I would have thought I'd have the ability or the plane to handle. And so that's been a change for me is thinking in those ways. I'm not interested in a plane that goes 70 knots, per hour, and it's going to take me forever to get to one of those places. So I don't want a true backcountry plane. But boy, I really like doing the gentleman's backcountry stuff. So
I have a question for you, Ted.
Yeah,
it's not really related, but it's related. How is the landing gear on the egg in terms of, because I was watching a video recently from and I forget the fella's name. He's in Florida. He flies an RV, and I've learned a lot from RVs about him from him.
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking about how one of the cons of an RV, I forget, I can't remember all the RVs. Mm-hmm. Not the 14 or whatever, but or maybe no. Which one is the 4-seater? Is that the 14?
That's the 10. The
10. Okay, so maybe the 8.
The 14 is what Flight Shops has that looks like an oversized 2-seater.
Okay,
it's just a bigger 2-seater, and the rest of them are. I have trouble. An RV6, RV7, all those look fairly similar to me. So
the light sport, it's
the light sport is the 12.
Okay, 12.
Yeah.
So he was talking about in that one of the cons of that airplane particularly was just the fragility of the landing gear. And so if you're going to be doing a lot of gentleman's backcountry, as you call it, like that term, that you have to be really mindful with your inspections and watching things, and they're not going to take a beating like a Cessna would. Is that how the egg is?
It is in a way. Now the RV12 part of it is, and this is true with at least some of the other RVs. I hope nobody fact checks me on this, but because of how the front wheel is bolted to the firewall, that tends to be a little bit of a weak point. And so there's some aftermarket kits to kind of beef that up a little bit. But especially the front wheel on RV12s is delicate. Generally, LSAs tend to be more delicate because they're lighter and everything about them has to be simplified. So they may not hold up as well as a Cessna 150 does, and dropping it and everything else. So
do you find that your experience in hot rodding Miatas back in the day has helped you in shoring up some of the structural weaknesses of your CTLS?
Well, I'm not working on it, but one of the things that I really like about the CTLS compared to some of the others is because it's carbon fiber, it tends to it's a different strength, and the landing gear on that especially is a little bit more durable. The front wheel, it has some of the same drawbacks, but the main landing gear, especially with slightly oversized tires on it, does really well. And So that's why I can get away with going to some of these places and enjoying it. But a lot of it is just about protecting that front wheel, and that's famously the part that you have to be a little careful with.
Well,
So-
and that folds us into another layer of what we've been talking about relative to mission, or a better word for mission, purpose, in terms of what the right plane is. If we're strictly talking about ownership, they don't train you how to do that in flight school.
Oh, yeah.
Unless you're cultivated in one of those environments around a bunch of other owners or something like that. But at least, for me, it was a loss. Which, by the way, don't let me forget, Ben, that I want to bring up the feedback that we had about the what was it they call it, like the manners, and all that. But yeah, so as an owner, that's a whole other set of considerations in terms of your mission. I think if you're renting in any capacity, flying club or whatever else, then you are able to flex and shop around and get what you need, and a little bit of this, a little bit of that. As an owner, I think I see a mixture of things so far. I see some people aspiring to too much airplane. They want a beefier plane than they need, and then they don't think about 6 cylinders versus 4 in terms of maintenance costs, and overhaul funding and all of that. But yeah, so I would say if you're trying to define your purpose based on just the flying part and what you want to do with the plane, that's great. But I think you also have to really fold into that what is within a reasonable, safe, and achievable scope as an owner. And most of us as midlife pilots, we are learning how to do that as we go. And so you have to perhaps temper a little bit of your proposed purpose or mission, because you're not ready to own or maintain and understand a plane on that level yet. So, yeah.
Someone who did intentionally try not to overshoot is Mark, Wendell Geek. And I asked him before we recorded this to tell us about his experience with, back to our word, mission, of choosing a plane, because he took a path that I think is something we can all aim for. So let me play that.
As you guys already know, last year I sold Maggie my Cherokee 140 in order to buy a share in a Cherokee 235, which as of yet is still unnamed. A big part of the reason for doing that was coming up against the limits of the 140. I mean, I really liked that airplane a lot. She looked good, she had a pretty good set of avionics for IFR, and she really sipped fuel. I was able to average about 7 gallons per hour on long cross-country flights. Shut up, Ted. In any case, she did have some problems with what I was trying to do. What motivated my decision was her climb rate. I took my wife on a trip to Florida in the summer. Under normal circumstances, I'd expect to get about 200 to 300 foot climb above 5,000 feet. I routinely had to tell ATC during IFR flights that I was unable 500 foot per minute climb, which was just not a big deal most of the time.
Charlie approach Cherokee 6374 Whiskey, unable 500 foot per minute climb.
74 Whiskey, Roger, that's fine.
So what's the rate of climb?
Like 300?
On this particular flight, there was light to moderate turbulence, and I will never forget the fear that ran through me when I was at about 7,500 feet trying to get to my assigned altitude of 8,000, attempting a maximum performance climb, but actually descending 500 feet per minute in light to moderate turbulence. I was looking for nearby airports to land at. That was the moment that I realized I can't consider this airplane seriously for cross-country flying, which was what I wanted to do with my private and instrument tickets. The 235 that I bought into routinely climbs out at 1,000 foot per minute or more. The first flight I took in the airplane, we had 3 people and full fuel in the summer and saw 1,000 foot per minute climb on takeoff. The airplane cruise climbs at 500 foot per minute up to 9,000 feet. Now that doesn't give me permission to fly in any conditions, but it does expand the conditions that I can fly compared to the 140. One thing I also learned only after the fact is how much a safety improvement an autopilot is for single pilot IFR. So as much as I really loved owning Maggie, she is a trainer. She's an excellent trainer, but what I wanted out of an airplane had changed. And I think the 235, although not nearly as pretty as Maggie, fits what I want a lot better. See how easy it is to say all of that without having to use the word mission?
He has such a great example of not overshooting and buying too much plane to begin with. And Maggie was a very good VFR trainer plane, and he upgraded to that. And it's something that let him do real good IFR missions. Yes, I'll use that word. And also to go on longer flights and a little higher speed, a little bit better range, everything else. And so I love that example of it's like, yes, you don't have to buy the plane that does everything first thing. You can change planes. You can actually sell these.
I love the sound of the controller that he pulled into that clip where he's telling him he can't do 500 feet a minute, and the controller's like talking to him almost like it's a little child that's not tall enough to ride the roller coaster. You know, like, well, that's okay.
Exactly. So I was at a Rod Machado seminar yesterday, or keynote, and he said he has 3,000 hours in his Cessna 150s, and 2,999 of those are climbing. And I thought that was about appropriate.
He's got the jokes.
Oh, he does. They're, yeah. So
still going strong.
I love that, like, you know, it climbs barely, but it climbs. So yeah, I really liked that from Mark talking about not overshooting the mission like that.
Yeah, and it kind of summarizing what we're saying here, sometimes your purpose will fit the plane you're flying, and sometimes you're in a position where you can get the plane to fit the purpose that you want to fly in. It's not always the case, and either way is perfectly fine. There's a pretty popular Instagram Fly Me to the Fund. I mean, they fly that 150 all the way down to like the Caribbean. I mean, over water and everything. But to Mark's point, you're going to be extremely limited at certain times, and they're flying at 1,500 feet above the water and having to relay radio calls. And if you want to deal with that, then a 150 should be fine with you. We got some great feedback in the chat from Biff B. One way airplanes differ greatly from other assets is that they hold value. So generally, you are never stuck with one. So the ability to upgrade as needs change is a very real possibility. It's absolutely the case. Sometimes you're in a great plane and you just need to upgrade the avionics, give yourself more capability. There's a million different ways to approach that. So it's a great point, and we appreciate that.
One more thing about this topic before we go to our midlife mailbox. We don't have any notes on this, so we might not have much to say. But I was just curious if you were just going to offer to listener X that is just now finishing private training, maybe they're looking to go right into their instrument, maybe not. Maybe they're looking at a flying club, or maybe looking at a partnership, fractional ownership situation, kind of in that position, right? Like, what would be some early steps that you could tell somebody, paths to go down to help them sort that out? Or what would be your advice to them? Because like my mom always had great advice for any ambiguous situation. She would say, if you don't know what to do, just stand still. So you don't have to do anything, right? Like, you could just keep running the plane that you've been flying, training in, and hang loose for a minute. You don't have to do anything. But I was just curious, if we were going to send somebody off from this episode to be more pursuant to figuring out what their path is, what would you recommend, Ted?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that really come to mind. The one is, don't rush. Don't feel like you need to buy a plane immediately or get into a club immediately or anything else. Rent different planes. That's the half of my advice, right? Go fly different planes. You've probably been in one or two plane types through your training. Go fly something else. Fly a low wing, fly a high wing, fly whatever that's different than what you've been in. And learn what you like about each of those. There's advantages. Man, the first time that you get into a free castering tail or free castering nose wheel, totally different experience, right? And those are the types of things that really let you think about what you might want to get into. So that's my advice, Ben.
And the only thing I would add is that do exactly what you said, but then bring a spouse if you have one, or a partner with you, and see how they like it, or your kids. You're going to learn more about what your mission is going to be when you're flying the 172 around and taking these small trips and just testing out the waters, basically. They may love it, and that's going to take you down one path. They may hate it, and you may be the only one flying to places. That's going to take you down a different path. So 100% agree. Do what you're doing the same thing you're doing when you're a student, and continue that 6 months to a year, and just see where it takes you.
Ben, it's 2024, February of 2024. I guess I shouldn't have said that because we try to keep all of our stuff evergreen, but people will figure it out. So we are just starting the Buy the Sage a TBM GoFundMe today. I estimate 2000, what do you say, 50, 55, we might reach the goal. And at that point, I hope that you're sure that this is the right plane for you, because we have been working at that point. It'll be, 25 years of tireless GoFundMe to get you to that point. Is there any chance, Ben, that we're going to buy you a TBM, and then you're going to get your family in there and just like, I don't know.
So AOPA by that time will probably be raffling off a TBM, and I'll be still trying to win
a vintage 2009 TBM.
See, that's the advantage, is that as the fund increases to buy Ben a TBM, the value of TBMs hopefully is going down. So those will intersect at some point where there's a ratty old TBM that we can afford to buy Ben, and that's the goal, is to get that crossing point. Well, we've got a couple of mailbox entries we wanted to get into before we move out, and these are generally sent as feedback to midlifepilotpodcast@gmail.com, and like to actually we're gonna want to get some feedback on some of these. So Ben, are you gonna read that first one?
I'll do the first one. We got an email from Rick K. In episode 61 on building confidence, somebody mentioned something I hadn't thought about on an overnight cross-country, FBO foot protocols and tipping, things of that nature. As it turns out, I have my first long cross-country plan next month with at least 3 nights on the road. His question is, what have you discovered about these topics? How do you arrange for inside hangering with access to 110 volt for an engine heater? Find out who offers such services. Do they have a pilot lounge, and can I sleep in it? And he goes on to say, I don't have get-there-itis, but I will need to move smartly between weather systems and flow eastbound with the brief high-pressure system. And he goes on with that. I don't want to burn a lot of daylight defrosting the wings or dealing with a cold-soaked engine. So we want to ask our pilot friends, maybe in the northern part of the states, up in Alaska, or even in Canada, what do you guys do? Here in the South, I don't really worry about engine preheaters. That's just not a thing really for us. There's maybe 1 or 2 days a year that we would like to fly. And what I can offer as my experience is I have flown to destinations where I knew a weather system was going to be moving in during my stay. And before I ever left my home airport, I called the FBO and asked if they had hangar space. And, they said, absolutely. I said, well, I'd like to have it hangared for this night. Looks like a storm's coming in. They said, no problem. A lot of answers, or a lot of your questions can be answered by just calling the FBO and telling them what you need. It really is as simple as that. But recommend hotels, places to stay, or whatever you need to do. If you're going to a smaller airport, that could be a little bit more challenging if there's not actually an FBO. But you can ask other pilots, or maybe an airport nearby that does have an FBO. You can ask them.
Yeah, I've had two interesting experiences like this. The one was when I was ferrying my plane home. It rained and then it froze on the wings overnight, and I actually had a need. That's when the egg cracked, and I had a need to go into a mechanic shop that next morning, and so it sat there in the mechanic shop and melted all the ice off and just made big pools on the floor in the mechanic shop. So I got lucky on that, which is I didn't have to worry about scraping off the ice or anything else. The other was I was renting a plane. And I kind of got stuck in a very small town in this rented plane with storms coming through and everything else. And I was hanging out in this, very homely county FBO. And I figured to be there for a couple hours. And I was there like 4 or 5 hours. A couple people came through, and naturally, because this always happens, somebody came through and said, "Hey, my hangar's the first one," points to the row, the one with the windows on it. There's a key hidden, tells me where. So there's a couch on there and there's heaters in there. Just help yourself. I just love that. That kind of stuff comes up all the time where, man, if you get stuck like that, you need to sleep in a pilot lounge, people will come up and, I don't know, those experiences happen, or you'll find a hotel, and that happens too. So,
well, I think we've talked about some of this overlaps here with some of our flight planning, cross-country conversations. And everything that we know is not because we are particularly smart or capable. It's just through suffering and pain that we have learned the things that we have learned. I definitely think being very comfortable with calling FBOs, even if you're a new pilot and you just feel weird about it. I understand what that means, right? You don't want to be the annoying person on the phone asking questions in a strange way to people that are too busy to want to deal with you. Most people are very, very nice. And then also with FBOs and calling FBOs, one, make sure that if there's any specific need that you're going to have for preheating or for a place to sleep or any other thing, make sure that that's just part of your flight planning. That is not something you want to just find out. So that being said, I've definitely had also, like you, Ben, I've had situations where I knew that I was going to be going to some place and needing to park the plane for 3 days, and knowing full well that major storms coming in, bad, like these southern thunderstorms that we have to get out of can be pretty insane and scary. Especially if you're at an unfamiliar airport, you don't know what the quality is of even the tie downs they do have. They might say they have tie downs, but you get there and the ropes are shoestrings, or, you just can't count on anything. You have to just have planning and forethought and alternatives and outs for ground situations as much as in the air. And so I would say, call FBOs. I definitely, even though I had permission, or I called the airport the day before and said, "Do you have transient hangar space for me? I'm coming in tomorrow morning." And they said, "Sure, yeah." Even though they had told me the day before that they had the space, I'm still calling again before I actually leave the next morning. As soon as somebody will answer the phone there, I'm there saying, "Hey, just making sure you still have transient space, because when there's weather coming in, everybody else is going to be looking for shelter. You better know." So anyway, I wish that we had more experience in this world of engine preheating and all these things. But I will say, ask for help. People are very helpful. They'll give you the help. And yes, again, anybody who's listening that has experience and can lend any more depth or answers to those questions, send them in. So let's get real quick to this last bit of midlife mailbox. It's nothing long here, but worth a read, if anything, just out of pure envy. This is a message from Rick C. out of Sierra Golf Uniform. "Love your podcast. I'm a 750-hour pilot working on my commercial. I own a 172 XP set up for backcountry, and also own a Bonanza F33A. I have a new hangar at the airport. I hope I can make it out there in April. Keep up the good work." So thank you for props. And yes, we'll keep up the good work, even if we have to redo them on Sundays. We'll keep up. We'll keep trying one way or the other.
Yeah.
And I want to say that congrats on getting everything done that you've done, Rick. And I'm sure your commercial will come soon enough. Very, very envious of your setup, a 172 XP for setup for backcountry, and also a Bonanza. So really, we could have just avoided this whole long, protracted conversation and just said, "Be like Rick."
Rick C.
Rick C. He's got it dialed in.
It is the trifecta. It is the absolute. He's got 2 airplanes with different missions, which is perfect, and he has a hangar.
Yeah.
I mean,
he's also at St. George Airport, which is beautiful tarmac, brand new hangars, new airport. Everything about it is beautiful there. I go there about 2 or 3 times a year and looking forward to going back.
Having never met Rick, I pretty much think I want to be him when I grow up.
Or part of whatever organized family he's in.
I'll take that as well.
We'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Well, it's been a great discussion. Why don't we wrap things up? I want to remind everybody about the Nashville fly-in happening April 26th through the 28th. We will be the compound is sold out. I'm happy to say, but sorry for those that weren't able to get on it. We do have a lot more information on our website at midlifepilotpodcast.com. Hotel suggestions, where to go, what to do, all the stuff. So please check that out. And
the fly-in's coming up quick, by the way.
Yeah.
You realize this is happening. I'm super excited.
2 months.
I'm kind of freaking out a little bit.
Why are you freaking out?
I can't wait. I mean, I really want it to be tomorrow, but the response has been really overwhelming for me.
Yeah.
And I'm flattered by it. I'm not knocking it. I just, it's such a cool thing. And just to really hang out with, if it rains, I'm totally fine with that. As long as we got a lot of people coming in and we can just hang out for a while, I just think that'd be awesome. So
it's going to be a blast, and
really
have everybody kind of condensed in one area and near the airport and all that. And yeah, again, just to remind people, when you go to the website, there is basically a button you can press that'll take you to the event site, and that will outline for you other recommendations. If you can't be in the compound, we still want to hang out with you at the compound. So just get yourself a crash pad and then come hang with us at the end of April.
Yeah, that would be great. We will be getting back together on Tuesday evening at our normally scheduled time with solid internet connections and solid microphones to record our next episode. I don't remember what it is, but we will let you know very soon. Don't forget to visit us at patreon.com/midlifepilotpodcast and support us. We would really appreciate it. Anything else, gentlemen, for the good of the order?
Nah, man. Good job.
All right. Closing out episode 63 of the Midlife Pilot Podcast. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone.